I mean to say that you talk about aviation industry, you talk about hotel industry, you talk about motor vehicle, real estate, you mean anything. COVID has affected all of us. Now, I will be focusing because we will love to learn from the experts. But my issue is that the topic wise, that what is the challenges for the business environment? There is so much hue and cry about the word exit China. There is a mantra that people are coming from China. The question is not that China is coming down or not. Question is that will India seize the opportunity? Whether we will be able to, I mean, convert these challenges into opportunity. To my mind, I will just point out that different challenges, opportunities, and the way out. I will not take much time. But as we all know that there are challenges. If you ask me that what are the challenges, the major in challenge is that our youth, particularly in India, there is a problem of unemployment. I mean that employment is required to jobless workers. Then we have to restore the whole of the economy, restore the Indian industry. And these are the points which is COVID related. But India is having some perennial problem. And that is, for example, we talk about in economics terms, we talk about that Gini index. Gini index means that there is a gap between the rich and poor. In India, inequality is the biggest problem. Now, due to COVID, again, there is a problem. There is a leakage in government scheme. Government in India, we are having Manrega, many of the social benefit schemes. But down the line, whether that benefit is reached to the, I mean, destined person or not, that is the biggest problem. Then we are having health issues. I mean, that we have to bounce back. There is a geopolitical scenario also becoming up. We just listening from, I mean, China and all these things. And then, of course, challenges with regard to our education also. That it has, COVID, what they have done it. Already everybody, as far as our teaching faculty is concerned, we are into technology. But this has pushed us more, you know. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he gave 5 points, which he termed as आत्मनिर्भरता की बात करी उन्होंने. 5 points वो क्या करना चाहते हैं? Number one is that we want an economy that takes quantum jump. Am I audible? Seema, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. We need an economy that takes quantum jump. It is not incremental change. Second is some disturbance going on. There is some disturbance.
There is a disturbance. Please
Is it okay?
mute your microphone. Yes, sir. Now it's
Yeah.
okay.
Second point is that we need world-class infrastructure. First one is we want a quantum jump in economy, not incremental change. Second point is that we want world-class infrastructure. That is, we want to create an identity for which India should be known. Third point, which Prime Minister, I mean, advocated is technology-driven arrangement. I mean that we are to fulfill dream of 21st century and not, I mean that dream is technology oriented. Then of course India, we are having vibrant demography. The vibrant demography is a source of energy for self-reliant India, and demand we have to boost. Let me underline one thing for our students also, that self-reliance does not mean that we are to close our doors for the outsiders. Of course, we need a collaboration. Of course, we need a. Now, question is that what are the opportunities available to us? See, there is an opportunity for the IT professionals. Then we have to capture shifting, global investments. We want to attract investment because industry people, they might be coming away from China. The question is that we have to create a conducive environment whereby they can come. Then R&D is something very important. Professor Devti Raman will agree with me that R&D, we need a focused R&D. Focus on what? Focus on health sector, particularly in health sector, particularly not only health sector. We need to promote health tourism also, because India is a cheaper health services available. People can come to India as a destination. Then alternative, I mean therapy hub. We talk about Ayurveda, we talk about Unani, yoga, meditation. These are the things which is new word which is coming up. Then opportunities that we have to create an infrastructure, ICT in rural area. NR Sharma ji sitting over with us. We were discussing about the problem of students also in the rural area. What to talk about internet facility? Even mobile, affordable mobile is not available with the our poor girl student at the border area. India is having that type of problem also. Then agriculture, there is an opportunity. We have to, I mean, speed up, push up agro processing units in cluster zone. You can't develop whole of India, but identify the clusters, and with the clusters you have to focus that. Then I believe I believe that we have to shift from conventional way of thinking to green economy. When I say green economy, I would say that we have to develop a culture working from home. Working from home culture is required, not only in teaching but in whole of the industry also. Number two, lesser vehicle. That is why we are talking about green. I mean India. We have to save paper and we have to reduce pollution. Now, Thakur ji, can I do 2 minutes more? Principal sir, 2 minutes more. I will wind you up. Is it okay? Now, Indian model of economy, what could be there? Employment creation is the key. This is the first take what I would like to say. Number one is employment creation is the key to resolve our problem. Number two, we need to develop self-reliant economy. When I say self-reliant, when I say Swadeshi, it doesn't mean that we are to close our boundaries for outsiders. We have to get the things done, but at the time of crisis, we must be able to sustain ourselves, nurture ourselves. Third thing which I want to give, that there is a need for a cooperative and collective business model. I am to I mean tie up with Professor Revati Ravan. Revati is to tie up with somebody from the Harvard. Harvard is to tie up with some again from somebody from India. Some sort of collaboration, some type of collective model is required. Then again, trusteeship model which Mahatma Gandhi advocated, that need to be followed. And these are the 3-4 points which I believe that should be the Indian model. And three things are very, very important. Key issue is key issue is that communication channel should be open. There should be trust, because trust is something very, very important. And lastly, we need to imbibe rapid policy change. So with these words, I once again grateful to uh, Sundar Thakur ji. Again, I am very happy that one of my student, I think that Sumit Golkhani, he is with us as a resource person. He is my student, and I believe that a teacher, for teacher, if some students are, sitting with them, discussing, we feel very proud. So all these words, I once again thank you, all of you, to listen to me. Thank you very much, and I feel that I would have more interaction with Revati Raman in times to come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We are extremely grateful for your encouragement and for your precious time and words. Thank you so much again. Now, I humbly request our guest of honor, Dr. N.R. Sharma ji, to say few words of wisdom. Sir, please, now it's over to you. Dr. N.R. Sharma ji. Dr. N.R. Sharma ji. Sir, can you hear me? Dr. N.R. Sharma ji. Dr. N.R. Sharma ji, sir, can you hear me? Okay, I think sir has lost connection. It may be possible. some technical problem may be there, and we can proceed further. Principal sir.
Hello.
Principal sir, can we proceed further?
Hello.
Hello. Okay. NR Sharma sir.
Hello.
Yes sir. We are listening to you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Welcome, sir.
Respected Dr. Surendra Thakur Sahab, my elder brother, Professor Karamjit ji, eminent speaker Revati Raman ji, and Mr. Sumit, esteemed guests and eminent dignitaries, my dear colleague and student. I feel privileged to be invited to the webinar and highly thankful to the organizers for blessing me this opportunity and platform to express my view. I would like to extend my heartiest congratulations to Dr. Surendra Thakur ji for wisely selecting the seminar topic, currently which is a hot topic of discussion. I think COVID-19 has changed the way the world works, just like the Great Depression, dot-com bubble, and the 2008 financial crash did in the past. The question on everyone's mind is, will things go back to normal? Fundamental changes will take place in how people, their business, economy functions. The next 12 months will be difficult. Many business will be struggle. Some may even perish forever, but as the economy adversity of the past, new industries will emerge, bringing with it renew hope of recovery. Eventually, things will go back to normal. Just that we will have to change the definition of normal. Dear friend, as per my opinion, in this current paradigm, there are two types of sectors are going to be dwell. Number one is adversely affected sector, and the second one, sector with a possible C unlifted. Adversely affected sector are apparel and textile, auto sector, aviation and tourism, shipping and non-food retail, building and construction. Sector with a possible C unlift are digital and internet economy, online-based product and services, education technology and online education, along with firm involved with online skill development, online grocery, FMCG and retail, specialty chemical firm dealing in chemicals. Pharmaceutical firms are set to see growth in the near term. Now we have been warned that life will not go back to normal after the COVID-19 pandemic has been contained. What will the new normal be, and how best can we shape it to be humane while economically sound? The burst of COVID-19 impact will be felt by India most vulnerable in terms of job loss, poverty increase and reduced per capita income, all of which will be reflected in a steep decline in GDP. Up to 135 million jobs could be lost, and 120 million people could be pushed back into poverty, all of which will reduce consumer income, spending and saving. An opportunity loss of up to $1.0 trillion of nominal GDP is starting us in the face. Not only here, now the question how we work. As my worthy colleague, eminent education Professor Ramji speaks, we work for pandemic, protect people and their livelihood, and avoid the destruction of our economy will determine our future post-COVID-19. The economic and social impact of COVID-19 could be devastating in the long term if the recovery from it is not well managed. COVID-19 involved multiple variables with a highly volatile value. They fall into 4 key categories. Already Professor Karamji has spoken. And their interplay will define the impact on society, business, and the economy. The Indian government, I think, moved fast to counter the impact, announcing a fiscal stimulus of $22.6 billion, while the Reserve Bank of India slashed the repo rate by 75 basis points and announced liquidity support of over $49.8 billion on aggregate basis. However, a far more assertive approach may be required given the magnitude of lost economic output. I think we have with us eminent speaker, India Horn, and he is serving in New Zealand, Professor Repti Ramanji. All are waiting for his lecture. With these few words, again I extend my gratitude. Thanks to Professor Surendraji as well as organizer. Thank you very much. Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out your precious time and gracing the webinar with your benign presence. Thank you so much again. Now I would like to invite our worthy keynote speaker, Dr. Repti Raman Sharma ji. Please, sir, throw some light on the main theme of the webinar. Please, sir, Dr. Repti Raman Sharma ji, now it's over to you.
Thank you. Just give me a second, please. I would like to share my slides.
Okay, no problem, sir. I request all the participants, please mute your microphone and turn off your video. I request all the participants to turn off your video. No, sir, no, it's not visible here.
The reason is if I click press present now and your entire screen,
Okay.
It's not allowing me to share. Maybe you need to, there might be something in the settings. The host might need to allow me to share my.
Okay, I can talk to her, ma'am, Gurbinder ma'am. Just wait.
The option is there, but it's not highlighted. That means I'm not allowed.
I'm trying to talk her, ma'am, Gurbinder ma'am. She will see what can do. Gurbinder ma'am, please.
Oh yeah.
Gurbinder ma'am.
It's done. I guess it's done. Can you see it now? Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see it. Now it's visible. Good. Okay.
Slides. Kia ora, namaste, sat sri akal, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Respected Chief Guest Professor Karamji Singh, Guest of Honor Dr. N.R. Sharma ji, Sumit ji, Principal Surinder Singh Thakur ji, IQAC Coordinator Dr. Bharat Bhushan ji, Convener and HOD Mrs. Usha Goyal, and Co-Convener Dr. Seema ji. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And when I was listening to the previous speakers and friends, I was thinking that, oh, most of my job is already done.
Yes. Sir, unmute your microphone, please. Reti Raman, sir. Reti Raman, sir. Can you listen me? Reti Raman, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, it's okay.
Oh, sorry, I was.
Yes, your screen is visible now, not presentation only.
And
Yes, now it's okay.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. I want to, okay. So I have to say all that again. That's fine, no worries.
Now
So
it's okay.
I'm conscious of the time constraints. And can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Namaste, Kia ora, Sat Sri Akal, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Professor Karamjit ji, Dr. N.R. Sharma ji, Somit ji, Principal Surendra ji, Dr. Bharat Bhushan, Usha ji, and Seema ji. Thank you all of you for giving me this opportunity to talk on the topic. And when I was listening to the previous speakers, and especially Professor Karamjit Singh ji, I thought he has already done about most of my job. Then what would I do? So anyway, still I need to say something and say the previous speakers, Professor Karamjit ji nicely highlighted very significant. How come I get muted every time? Can you hear me now? My phone sounds. Can you hear me, please? Strange.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But your screen is visible. Presentation is not visible.
So see, how about now?
It's okay.
Okay,
Now,
I wouldn't make it full screen then. So is it fine?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's go straight to the point. Sorry.
Okay. No problem, sir.
And see, I mean, all the friends and dignitaries over there. So let's go straight to the topic. And as previous speakers highlighted the bright and dark sides of COVID, and I see one of the bright sides how I'm sitting here in the evening in winter season at 7 p.m. on my dining table, and we know all of us are at different places and talking to each other. That's brilliant. And I have a bit of edited my title. As you see, the title is Global Business Environment and Phenomena and the Impact of COVID-19. So if you see my screen, it's about on the left side here. That's where I am at the moment. You might be surprised how come New Zealand is in the middle of the world, and that's where you are. Another perspective is, if we turn the map upside down, here I am, and here you are. Say, the point I'm trying to make is, it depends on the perspectives on how you see things. So 2 or 3 years back, I developed a brand new course right from scratch, which was titled Contemporary Issues in International Business. And the key focus is, which I would like to message here as well, for any aspect, may it be COVID phenomenon, may it be anything, there are always multiple perspectives, there are always multiple sides of the stories, and we need to be mindful and careful in looking at all the possible sides of those stories. Now, I would I wouldn't go on details for this. I was thinking of asking you, what comes to your mind when you think or talk about global business environment and COVID-19? So some quick comments in the chat box. What comes to your mind when you think about global business environment or COVID-19? Can I please have certain comments in the chat box? When you're thinking about the global business environment and so external environments affecting us, wonderful. So something which is beyond your control that is affecting us. So please respond to my question. End of globalization. Wonderful, wonderful, Ricky Sidhu. I'll talk on that. That's a very, very debatable topic, which I included in my course. Are we seeing the tail end of globalization or not? That's a very debatable question, and we can spend about an hour or so, 1 or 2 hours on to that. Information knowledge, recession, loss of jobs. See, you have highlighted nice points onto globalization is the opportunity to overtake the crisis. So we say you have shared very to the point, meaningful points, and some of those comments like, are we seeing the end of globalization or other issues? Those are really, really big issues. And we know it could be all economic, social, technological, media, political, legal, or ethical issues. What I would like to share with you in the next 20, 30 minutes is, I would share with you some of the global phenomena, some of the aspects of global business environment, and then I would request you to think about how COVID could be related to those aspects. I might not be going in details, but the thing is, being familiar with the global phenomenon, what is happening around, and then exploring or thinking about where does COVID fit in within this broader scheme of things. So that's the broader idea. So let me share with you some of the trends. I will be brief here on these. And I'm sure, I hope everything is going fine. So say, is it globalization is the concept which people are talking about, things beyond globalization. In this graph, look at a few trends. If you see this trade line, flow of trade is almost constant, or I would say declining after some time. When we look at data, data tells us that now more is being consumed locally. We have plenty of evidence. So that means the trade intensity is declining. More is consumed in the regions where it is produced. And the flow of finance, but look at the flow of data. That's a global trend. Flow of data versus flow of trade versus flow of finance over across borders.
Sir, can you show your presentation, Depti Raman sir?
Yes, it is.
No, sir, it's not visible. Sorry to interrupt you.
It's strange. I guess
because participants are requesting for the presentation.
On my screen, it says it's fine. Somebody else,
okay.
There was a message, somebody else is also sharing.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Usha ma'am. Hello, Usha ma'am. Are you listening me?
So,
Seema ma'am.
I am.
Very good afternoon.
Sorry, on my side it says that screen is being shared.
No, sir. Okay, you can continue as it is if it's
I
not
forgot to
possible.
say, I don't know, like, that's fine.
Share
At
screen
at
Sir,
my university,
sir, please share your screen
for presentation.
for presentation.
I'm sharing. I'll stop and share again probably. It says,
Okay. No, sir. So you can continue as it is.
Okay.
it's really, really strange. Is it fine? Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir. Now it is visible.
Sorry. Actually, probably that's another phenomenon. We say technology or the use of technology or various platforms technology.
Okay.
At my university, we are using Zoom and we are delivering classes with Zoom. So I understand different contexts and that's fine. But anyway,
Okay, no problem, sir. You can continue.
so what the point I was highlighting was the trade is becoming more regional. And one point one of the participants highlighted was regionalization. Very briefly, I would like to comment on to that. There are a group of scholars. There is empirical evidence that globalization never existed. You might be surprised why and how. One line, what it means is that when we check sales of multinational enterprises, majority of their sales are in their home region or in another region. So there are empirically prove that it's regionalization and it's actually not globalization, but that needs a full-on topic onto that. Anyway, so that was one trend we need to keep in mind. Second is we always talk about emerging economies, India, China, Africa, Southeast Asia. We talk about urbanization. Now, fast urbanization is happening. Also, there was another study by McKinsey. They say that the business should focus not on these emerging economies, but specific cities within these economies. So that means the main opportunities are in certain specific cities, bigger cities in these countries, and not these bigger economies as such. But still, emerging economies, that shift of demand and investment towards these economies is there. Now, please keep in mind that our focus is COVID, and we need to link all these to COVID at the end of the session. So another trend, typically we say that resources are limited. That is a very common argument. But some of the trends, they show us that resources are becoming unlimited. Again, it might be looking counterintuitive, but the argument is, look at this red line. The argument is the efficiency is going up and up, and cost per unit is going down and down. So some of the studies say that the growing population or the global population, we have the capacity to resource that population. With technological disruptions, less resources are required to produce more. That is, and based on that, resources could be argued as unlimited in the sense the limited resources can provide much more output than otherwise. Look at Israel. They are using seawater for drinking because of technology. Then when we look at automobile industry, is it manufacturing cars? May not be. It's more than driverless cars and electronics and all those things. The key point here is the resource utilization is becoming more and more efficient. We know, I agree about inequalities and all those aspects. I'll come to that. But that's one trend globally we see. Then we say industry disruptions are happening fast. So as I was saying, automobile manufacturing is not about building cars now. It's much more than that. It's the sensing technology, driverless cars, electricity, solar energies, and all that. Not just petroleum and crude oil, those things. So that means that disruption is happening at a quite large scale. And say, digitalization, because of digitalization, because of technology, we are talking to each other now. Basically, I'm talking at the moment. Have it been Zoom, we could have talked both ways. I could have got your participation as well. Anyway, that's one of the limitations here. So say, when you look at the global GDP, it's much more than what you see in the numbers. For example, you enjoy free goods and services. Zoom or Google Meet or Wikipedia, you pay nothing, but you get services. Internet providers, welfare gain, look at it, if you measure, it's in billions of dollars. You want to listen to music, you don't have to pay. So the question is that open source market where things are free, can it exist with proprietary market where you buy things? Now, some of the consultancy reports, they say that those free things like emails, that basically has dollar value, but you don't pay that. It can be extended to even real products, for example, clothing. So that again means if the problem in future is not about resources, and it might be moving from free economy towards a bit of regulated economy. So we have plenty, we have enough, but some have more than others, much more. So the key point here is the resourcing is not an issue. I'll skip this slide for a moment. Now say, the points made so far, as in the beginning, one of the speakers said the bright and the darker sides. When we look at the global trends, there is a bright side. Bright side is that the dollar value, the facilities, the trade, all those are bright side, and there is no denying to that. But at the same time, we see the darker side of global trends. Darker side of the global trends is exposure, progress, openness, exposure, cyber threats, terrorism. From 2001 to 2015, within 15 years, number of deaths by terrorism were increased by 5 times. There are rogue states, there are cyber threats. And because of these dark sides, and you can think about how COVID started and could it have been prevented? Is it the global connectivity, or are reasons beyond connectivity, and it's sort of the dark side of that global connectivity? And surely you need global cooperation if you want to manage that, those global collaborations. There's another very interesting debate at the moment, which is around US-China trade war. And that's also, I spent about 3 hours in my class onto that. So is it the darker side, or why this is happening, and what are the implications? So the global business trends have their side effects. Say, polarizing labor markets. So that's a widening earning disparity. You have the data, all the data supports this. Trust is declining. The number of proportion of people who trust business, government, or media or NGOs, that is declining quite fast. So the point here is the global growth is stuck in low gears, and after COVID-19, it's further down by 3-4% on an average. So then the question becomes, like, it's about to have a similar level of growth, you need about more than $3 trillion every year to be spent onto this. So I guess the point I'm making here is, we have the bright side of globalization, we have global trends, but at the same time, there is a darker side. There is widening disparity. There are cyber threats. There is terrorism. There is about the downside of global connectivity. A few more trends about global business environment. This is a study from Harvard, and you can see the title. So by 2030, we need to reduce carbon emissions to a certain level. And if we don't do it by that time, that means this is irreversible after that. And sometimes the phenomena of COVID could also be linked to the sustainability issue. So that's another trend which we see the green markets, the green products and all those things, but the carbon footprint, as per this study, needs to be reduced to a certain level, which seems like we have United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, but still it's challenging. I'm just highlighting certain issues, and I'm sure that you can link these towards COVID is basically another natural calamity. I'll come to that. Another phenomenon is modern day slavery. We all have, you might have iPhone or other phones with you, and in the battery there's a mineral, there's something which is mined by workers in Congo. They work 12 hours a day, $1 a day, and working in intense heat conditions without gear. People working in some other countries at a very minimal wages, very minimal good working conditions, get it on an average $1 or less than $1 a day. Maybe workers in Bangladesh factories or in China factories sometimes back. So some scholars, they say this is not a business, this is slavery. And very recently, there's a good amount of literature that this slavery exists in emerging economies, also in advanced economies, in US, in New Zealand, in other countries. You might be surprised how. Here, people on the immigrant workers or those who are vulnerable people, they do get paid less to do the same job which others paid reasonably high. So you might say in any country, sort of forced labor, and this is the downside of global business or global phenomena, which needs to be addressed. And when you think about COVID, you can say in the beginning, Professor Karamjit, he was highlighting job losses and all those things. So think, what would be the impact on this modern day slavery, which is the ugliest phenomenon of our times, where people we call workers, but some scholars don't call these workers because they don't get those working conditions. So that is part of the global business environment. And tax avoidance, we know, wouldn't go in details. People argue that what multinationals do is fine. There are arguments what they do isn't fine. Tax havens, implications for those countries, where they are located and where they should be. Now, you might be thinking that we know sustainability is an issue. We know modern day slavery is an issue. We know income inequality or poverty is an issue. We know unemployment is an issue. We know US-China trade war is an issue. We know it's more towards deglobalization or regionalization. We also call globalization. All these are issues. And when we step back and think, two things here. One, COVID is likely to accelerate all these things. That's my understanding when you start exploring all these phenomena. Second, interesting experimental study by Harvard professors. I wouldn't go in details considering the time constraints here. You might think that all those senior managers, when they know that this is an issue, when people on the decision tables, when they know this is an issue, then why don't they do anything? Very simple question. These professors, they run some experiment, and basically I will very briefly summarize what it means is, we might think that if you tell business managers that this is a business case means it makes sense to do it. Dollar sense, they will do it. This experiment proved that's wrong. Then there is an assumption that if you give them facts, then they will do it. This experiment showed that that's wrong. Then another assumption, they will invest once they believe in the case. That's also wrong. In this experiment, what they found was most of those senior executives, they do believe in the business case, but believing in the business case means you have that fair market ideology in mind. You can make sense of dollars input and output. And because of the same mindset, you can make sense of, is it your problem or not? Doing these things, is it problem of the business or the problem of the government? And by the same logic of fair market economy, they don't see it as a problem. And finally, the conclusion of their experiment was, once they are sensitized to these issues, once you are sensitive to, once you feel the pain of these issues, then they will do something. And this was like one of the reasons I created this course called Contemporary Issues in International Business, because these students will go up, and I use these for my executive MBA classes as well. The idea was sensitizing them about these issues. On each of the issues, I spend one class. So that is the people on the decision tables. It is not their market worldview, but it is their belief in the general worldview. So anyway, that's the brief about this study. Then you see FAO, regionalization, global value chains, another very, very critical issue you have highlighted. When natural calamities happen, for example, it was tsunami in Japan a few years back, and we know that global value chains are lean and slim. Problem in one part of the world impacts problem in other parts of the world. So is with COVID. Now, there is a discussion and there are trends I'm sorry that I can't bring all those trends into this small talk. There are trends that value chains are becoming regional now rather than global, or multiple value chains. If something is happening in China, everything shouldn't be stuck. There needs to be an alternate. And multinationals have started moving their supply chains to other locations. Again, there will be cost involved, but then the question will be, is it cost competitive advantage, or is it your resilience when such calamities happen? Poverty, inequality, shifts in economic power more towards emerging economies. Now, say we have talked about the bright and dark side. Let's be a bit specific on COVID. Is COVID a black swan or a white swan? Black swan basically means you hardly see any black swans. There are probably very rare or no black swans. That means anything which is rare, which doesn't happen quite often, that is a black swan. But COVID is one of the natural calamities, if you call it natural calamity. There could be other theories around, but that's a different topic. And if you look at the trends, there have been natural calamities, right? You look at last 10, 20, 30, 50, even 100 years. They do happen. And every time they happen, there are the reactions, but probably we go back to the same thing. And this COVID is more of a problem because of increased connectivity, increased global connectivity, increased global value chains, global trade. All that is very well connected. It's hard to survive one without the other one. That links back to the deglobalization debate. And say, here's a COVID is just a small one here. So throughout the history, you say there have been very big calamities. This goes right back to 165 to 2000, last 2000 years. So it's not a new one. It's a different one. And if you look at the size, even it's not as fatal as there were some other calamities around in the past. So even in terms of death toll, this is here. So what we know, like COVID specific 500 million poverty, that means that what we call inequality gap, that is going to increase. And I was reading another article. There was a professor 100 years back, more than 100 years back, he presented a paper in a conference that in the time to come, there wouldn't be problem of production, there will be problem of distribution. Or he called it technological unemployment. Production is not an issue. The issue is of distribution, which means more trends towards away from free market economies, where governments need to play a greater role to make sure that that distribution is fair enough. Decline in global output, fall in global trade, drop in FDI, drop in students. At my university, this year, we have about $20 million of loss because of decrease in students. And my university is New Zealand's top university in terms of research ranking. We have 8 universities, and this is #1 in terms of research output. And still we are feeling that pain of decline in student numbers, and that's a reality. Another 1 or 2 years, we need to think other things. Unemployment, these points were already highlighted. This is there. Now, social collapse is another thing to keep in mind. The supply side, companies are closing, economies are closing, workload is reducing, output is reducing, demand side, lockdowns, consumer behavior, decrease in spending, all that is there. Economies are more towards buy local, self-sufficiency, most of the countries. Self-sufficiency against globalization. Again, globalization, deglobalization is a big debate. Global value chains, regional value chains is a big debate. US-China trade war, and then we call Indo-Pacific. US, India, Australia, Japan. How Indo-Pacific is operating as Asia-Pacific. So specialization becomes a disadvantage. We say the theory of competitive advantage, do what you do better, others do other things. But would it be good enough? Because of when we are so connected and then one disruption causes so many issues. That's another thing to think about. So I have more or less touched on these points. Regionalization, trade intensity, more is being consumed where it is produced, and probably next couple of years, it will increase further, more local consumption and local production. We all know like Make in India initiatives and how India is opening FDI regulations for multinationals. And when we talk about US-China trade war, when we talk about global value chains, then India do come into picture. Because multinationals, either they are moving or they are thinking of moving to other countries, ASEAN countries, but India is also an option. So also other, we know like there's a debate on if people are working from home, dual operating models, work from home as well as work from office. Should bosses spy their workers? Do you trust them that they will be working at home? There's a debate on that. And more or less, in my part of the world, spying is not recommended. As you build trust with your employees, it pays more than trying to spy on them that whether they are working at home or not. You need to train your leaders on how you build your teams, keeping their morale high. I'll take another 2, 3, 4 minutes, please. Keeping their morale high, companies, liquidity, governments they are providing liquidity, but there has to be something more than that. Companies need to do something for community and they need to communicate this to community. So again, so this is a list of what is at risk. You can have a look at this later because it's a World Economic Survey. The top is global recession, high in unemployment, another disease outbreak. There was an article I was reading that 2 or 3 people, including Bill Gates, they predicted COVID before it went that across the globe. People didn't listen. And there's a whole list of risk factors. Given the time constraints, I'm not going through that, but you can look at that. And look at what the IMF chief economist is saying. This virus, or there might be other viruses or other calamities, when you look at sustainability and those trends, I think we should expect more and more calamities until we are able to decarbonize the atmosphere. So it needs a global cooperation, and we know that without that, it's hard to address. And say, so among other things, what I see here is
Sir, unmute your microphone, please. Repti Raman, sir.
goes mute by again and again. Was I muted since long? Okay, can you hear me now? All good? All right.
No, sir, now it's okay.
Okay. So
Yes.
what I was trying to do today is not going into very specifics of COVID, but just to sensitize and share some of the global phenomenon which we have discussed in the previous slides. And we can think that COVID could link it to all of this phenomenon, basically accelerate the downside of these phenomenon and the related opportunities. So that was my intention rather than being very specific. And as we say, the way forward, this, I would say, if I want to step back and think, this is a unique calamity, pandemic. It has its own features. My country, fortunately, New Zealand. India is also my country. That's my motherland. That's my Mata, and this is my Mosi. So I do feel about my mother, but my Mosi did very well. But my neighboring country, Australia, had another second wave of this phenomenon. So I think with this, with the message that there is a global phenomena, there is environment, there are trends, deglobalization, global value chains, trade war, sustainability, inequalities, dark sides of global business. And this pandemic is likely to accelerate all that phenomenon. And I would like to stop here and thank you, all of you. But given the time constraints, and I'm happy to take some of the comments or questions in the chat box. Can I please take 5 minutes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can take.
So now I can look at the chat box. So
Okay.
I am seeing question by Ricky.
Yes, sir.
The answer should be global, should be strengthening rather than ending. As right wing is increasing its influence, world politics, globalizations. Let's say, when I discuss these things with my students, my point is we need to be critical thinkers. That is the main objective of the course I am running. What I mean by critical thinker is not accepting whatever is printed by its face value and not being suspicious to everything. We look at both the sides. When you think about right wing or the left wing, this political party or that political party, that is beyond my scope of academic thinking. How I see is what is the phenomenon, what is the impact, what is the policy doing. Whether it is Mr. A or Miss A or Mr. B, that we don't bring that into picture. And when we say the future of globalization, there's a full debate onto that. I run 3-hour class for my class about globalization or deglobalization. And in the near term, and again, as I said, some people say that globalization never existed, but in summary, I would say more trends towards globalization or regionalization. So that's my thinking on to that. And India-China border tension, trade war. Say, I also have another full module on US-China trade war. And when we talk about border tension, I on top of my head, what I know is so long as trade is going between certain countries, there's a less risk of border tension. So that could be one way to look at that. But that's another, I haven't gone into the political and those relations between those countries. What I say is the economic relations, the trade. US, again, I have another webinar with another friend of Bharti and Surendraji with Professor Sharma, Principal Sharmaji on US-China trade war, specific on the trade war, reasons, going beyond what you read in newspapers, going beyond what you see in WhatsApp and all those things. That's not how we academics should think. We need to think based on evidence, based on thinking about theories and logics on all sides of the story. So psychological challenges, as I said, social collapse is a big danger. And at my school, at my university,
Sir, unmute your microphone, please. Redkaman, sir.
I don't know how it is muted every time. Anyway, so say people come first. You need to take care of your people. If your people, they are mentally strong, you take care of them, you take care of their well-being, they will perform much better. So at my university and this part of the world, the first thing they ask is, how are you doing? Your well-being. And work comes after that. This is a special, unique situation. And that we shouldn't allow that social collapse to happen. I'm conscious of my time, and I will close with my concluding comments that on top of this topic, which was global phenomenon or COVID, my humble request to all the scholars will be, which I do inculcate in my students, be critical thinkers, beyond what you read in popular press, be open to all sides of the perspectives. You have one side of the story, you have other side of the story, you have third side of the story. Once you know all the sides of the stories, only then you can assess and make your informed decision. So that is beyond what I supposed to deliver, but I think that is my concluding message. And again, thank you very much for organizing this and giving me the opportunity to contribute a bit back to my motherland, to Bharat Mata, from my Mausi land. And that's, I'm very happy, very pleased to share some of my thoughts. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Your session was full of passion and priceless knowledge. Thank you so much again. After the commanding opening of the session, I humbly request Shri Neeraj Jindal ji, Secretary, Management, Guru Nanak College Kilyawali, for formal to say few words of wisdom. Sir, please. Neeraj Jindal ji. Neeraj Jindal, sir.
Anji, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Guru Nanak College Managing Committee, I thank Professor Karamveer Singh, Dr. N.R. Sharma, Dr. Revati Raman Sharma, Mr. Sumit Koklani, and all the key persons for giving your auspicious time for this challenges faced by business environment and way forward. Thanks. Thanks everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Thank you so much again. After this, I would like to request Sumit Koklani ji. Sumit Koklani, sir, please join us. Resource person, Sumit Koklani ji, please join us.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon all. First of all, I owe my thanks to Guru Nanak College Kilianwali for giving me an opportunity as a resource person on the topic COVID-19 challenges faced by business environment and the way forward. Very well and deeply explained by Dr. Revati Raman on this topic. But as we all are aware of global pandemic COVID-19, because of which the world is facing a tough time. And out of this pandemic, there are various challenges as well as opportunities for the government. Let me discuss a little bit about business environment first. As we know, understanding environment in which the business has to operate is very important for running a business unit successfully at any place. Because the environment factors influence almost every aspect, be its nature, its location, distribution system, or personal policies. Hence, it is also important to learn about the various components which are uncontrollable, that uncontrollable components of business environment, such as economic aspects, social aspects, legal aspects, technological aspects, etc. Let me deep into the topic. The impact of COVID-19, it may be heavier than the 1929 depression era. That time the world was connected, this time also the world is connected. According to the CMI report, that is Center for Monitoring Indian Economy report, unemployment rate has gone up to around 30%. This may grow in the absence of successful revival of business. And this has adverse impact on blue-collar industry. They may have problem of dealing with their issues, labor required for the production work as well as the customer as well. While now, as organizations struggling to address the economic outbreak and reserving liquidity for their business. On the same hand, chief information officers are under more pressures to adjust new requirements. Amid COVID-19, some of the company focuses in investing in the new technologies, such as artificial intelligence, whereas some companies are fixing and rattling their existing infrastructure or hardware requirements. And we know we are getting into the unlock phases worldwide. Therefore, as per report, as per survey by Adobe regarding the chief information officers, they are rapidly functioning in increasing the digital world, that is to the digital only. They have pivoted their strategies to prioritize the needs of the customers and employees. Whereas business with earlier investment in digital technologies, they witnessed benefit in amid COVID-19. And others looked at their strengthening digital foundation or building up robust digital strategies for the long-term success. The most affected enterprises are the micro, small, medium enterprises. They have a potential to spur job creation. On November 4, 2019, India Spend reported that they create 11% jobs in India, which is significantly less than 30 to 40% in other developed and developing nations. Indian micro enterprises have low output elasticity of unemployment, as it is seen in unorganized sectors. While the government package of 3.7 lakh crore for MSME, they can provide much them liquidity, and beneficiary must be decided based on vulnerability assessment framework. In May, the government has announced 20 lakh crore Atmanirbhar package, including a slew of announcements to support MSME sector. And this includes a provision of emergency working capital and creating a dedicated fund with a 10,000 crore corpus. Very well said by Professor Karanjit sir, my teacher. The 5 pillars of the Atmanirbhar are given by Shri Pradhan Mantri Shri Narendra Modi, that is quantum jump, infrastructure, tech-driven, vibrant demography, and demand. And all these, implementing these will not be easy, and financial aid to MSME would not be effectively distributed because of the challenges identified and targeted those most in the needs. In June, Center has approved a change in the definition of MSME, and they have also launched a portal named Champions, that is creation and harmonious app of modern processes for increase the output and national strength. Which means they have there was a survey conducted by Endurance International Group an impact of COVID-19 crisis. The survey drew a responses of 500 Indian micro, small, medium enterprises in the first 2 weeks of June. One third of the respondent, they confirmed that they're temporarily shutting their business until the normalcy resumes. This pause in the business is more prominent among MSME in metro cities and those in retail and manufacturing verticals. Majority of MSME believes that it will take up to 6 months for the business to return normal. However, MSME is seeking a support from the government to tide over this crisis. Besides, 30% of MSME started a business, website, or enabled e-commerce functionality since the lockdown started owing to COVID-19 pandemic. Hence, for making a Atmanirbhar Bharat, there are various opportunities for the indigenous industries to develop themselves. Recently, the Ministry of Defense, they have provided, recently the Ministry of Defense has stated and given its focus on indigenous design and development. The bulk of clearance worth rupees 31,130 crore have been accorded for indigenous built weaponry. The main focus is on PSU sectors. Bharat Electronics, HAL, they have been given a project worth rupees 20,400 crore. And while the firm defense division does not import anything from any other country, especially from China. And most of the power units in India are imported from other countries. But now their focus is on, our government is focusing on PSU, that is BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electronics.
Koklani sir, unmute your mic, please. Unmute your mic, please.
Someone is deliberately muting the mic. Most power plants in India are imported from other countries, especially from China. But our government has identified a PSU unit, that is Bharat Heavy Electronics Limited, BHEL, which is capable of producing the best power plant in the world if it is given a full autonomy. And it is one of the concept of Atmanirbhar India. Much before the current India-China dispute or with other countries, in February, when US President Donald Trump visited India, Reliance Industry Managing Director Mukesh Ambani, they said, we have not bought a single Chinese component from China, and we are going to do 5G with our own capability without imported anything from any other country. And recently, JW Steel MD, they have given us clarification. They are importing 400 million tons of steel, power, cement from any other countries, and especially out of 400, $270 million are imported from China. And they have pledged that in another next 24 months, they will bring down it to zero. Therefore, as we see, India has import from April 19 to February 2020, only from China is $62.4 billion from China, which includes toys, clothes, watches, electronic equipment, sports goods, electrical machinery, medical integrants, furniture, mattresses, etc. Recently, the road transport, highway, and MSME Minister Nitin Gadkari said innovation, entrepreneurship science, technology, research, and successful practices, and conversion of knowledge into wealth is the future of country, particularly in the IT sector. And they urged and set their eyes on global expansion to fulfill the dream of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And he also said that when the Indian companies set their eyes for global success means the fifth point, that is demand. That is demand. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And for this, there is need to upgrade the technology, mostly in the rural areas. Yes, I am also from rural area, and we know how there are various challenges faced by us. So therefore, we have to develop the technology. We have to update the technology according to become a Atmanirbhar Bharat. And recently, according to order by Union Power Ministry, Indian companies will need a government permission to import all the power equipment and component from any other country, in which government will inspect to check for any kind of embedded malware and threaten which is adhered to Indian standards. And these, if we see in the power sector, the total import in the power sector in the year 2018-19 was 71,000 crore, out of which 21,000 crore was from China. And now government focuses on PSU sectors. I have taken example of Behel, Tata Power, that is a private sector. So in this, which are underutilized, they are fulfilling their demand to complete of their fully utilized. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected over 150 countries, and this has disrupted the international trade, its economies, as well as lives of its citizens. The government has been quick to respond, deal with this crisis, closing down its border, imposing national-wide lockdown, ramping up test and healthcare infrastructure, and announcing physical stimulus or relief packages which are of proportion. The responses, the responses of Indian government, the responses of Indian government was no different. India is still under a strict national lockdown for more than 70 days, which is followed by relief package in the tune of 10% of the country GDP, that is 20 lakh crore, which is obviously to kickstart the economic activity. Due to this lockdown, I am main focusing on the Indian MSME, which these sectors suffered most. Most of its collective production decreasing by more than 90%. This sector comprises around 64 million enterprise and employs close to 120 million people. And these MSME sector contributes 30% of 30% to Indian GDP and constitutes 45% of exports. Out of these, 14% are women-led enterprise and close to 60% based in the rural area. Hence, it is very important to the Indian economy, which is quite significant and critical to bridging down the rural-urban divide. Therefore, to help the business get back on the track, the Prime Minister of India announced a host of relief packs to help India to become self-reliant. Majority of relief was targeted towards MSME. In June, they have also changed the definition of MSME, that is micro, small, medium enterprise. Micro enterprises mean they have changed the definition recently. That is investment in plant and machinery is up to 1 crore and turnover up to 5 crore. Same as small investment in plant and machinery is up to 10 crore, turnover up to 50 crore. And medium enterprise investment is up to investment in plant and machinery is up to 50 crore and turnover up to 250 crore. 250 crores. Therefore, if we see the global pandemic, COVID-19, many hello, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry. Furtherly, government also provided with them a level playing field by reserving government procurement order up to 200 crore value and committed to clear invoices within the 45 days, which is a very helpful for the MSME. Other initiative also taken by the government, that is One Nation, One Card scheme, Ajivika app, and various stages of implementation, which can help employers to tap into locally available labor workforce. As we know, COVID-19, all the laborers are migrated to their homes, to their states, and now unlock phases, there is a problem of labor. Therefore, government has launched the app, that is One Nation, One Card scheme, and Ajivika app in various stages of implementation, which help employers to tap to local available labor workforce and restart production activities which were hampered due to migration of workers, labor due to their hometown. Thus, the government e-marketplace has also set up to boost MSME, in which they identified the orders of 20,000 crores since the inspection of government e-marketplace. Along with the Prime Minister calls for self-reliant India, the current phase of between India and China had led to increased demand for local manufacturing goods, unleashing the new opportunities for Indian MSME. And I also believe MSME businesses which are willing to reimagine their business, they involve their changing times, will be poised to leapfrog on the back of this unique opportunity. And it is a time to rethink, to reinvest their product strategies, differentiator, distribution models, product pricings, and so on. While there is a visible dip in the discretionary spending on consumer, so there's also a shift in the marketing shift in the consumer preferences, which can be leveraged. As we know, consumers are appreciating and even willing to pay a premium of safe practices adopted by the business during the sourcing, manufacturing, storage, and delivery. Similarly, digital marketing and online channels, they are also offer inexpensive way for MSME to reach a wider customer base. And therefore, if we can say technology adoption is the another factor which can help MSME to improve process efficiency, reduce cost, information visibility, and enhance worker safety. With the advent of cloud and cloud-based technology, they can easily create an elastic and flexible IT infrastructure. As compared to the large enterprise counterparts to support digitalization, the cloud-based solution to ensure worker safety by monitoring and contact tracing problem that can help business prevent an unexpected closure in case of inspection. At last, we have to broaden our technology sectors. We have to fix our hardware. We have to in order to face the challenges. I know the world is connected, and so world is connected, so we have to broaden the base in the technology sector, as well as we have to support our PSU to become a Atmanirbhar Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Your thoughts will surely help us to understand the topic. Thank you so much again. As we are running, having shortage of time, I humbly request Madam Usha Goyal to for formal vote of thanks. Madam Usha Goyal, please. Madam Usha Goyal.
Hanji, thank you, ma'am. From the core of my heart, I, Usha Goyal, on behalf of Guru Nanak College, Kilyanwali, thankful to all the esteemed guests who made this event a great success. Firstly, I would like to thank Professor Karamjit Singh, Registrar, Punjab University, Chandigarh, Dr. N.R. Sharma ji, Principal, SUS Punjab University, Constituent College, Guru Har Sai, Dr. Revati Raman ji, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, and Mr. Sumit Gokulane ji for sparing their valuable time and sharing their valuable views with us, who graced this occasion with their benign presence. I also thank all the participants for their active participation in this webinar. I'm also thankful to our mentor, Principal Dr. Surinder Singh Thakur ji, IQAC Coordinator Dr. Bharat Bhushan ji, my colleague and co-convener Dr. Seema Jindal ji, Mr. Ashish Bagla, Mr. Prince Singla, and Ms. Gurvinder Kaur for their active engagement to accomplish this task. Lastly, I would be failing in my duty if I will not thank all the teaching and non-teaching staff for their kind support. Once again, thanks to all. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Revati Raman ji. Thank you so much, N.R. Sharma ji, Sumit ji, and Karamjit sir. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello. सीमा मैडम फीडबैक लिंक के बारे में बता दो उनको कहाँ भेजना हमने.
Okay, sir. I'm requesting the participants just now. Okay. Now there is one request to all the participants to submit the feedback form through the link provided in the chat box so that the certificates can be issued. Thank you all again. Stay safe and happy. Thank you all.